Good morning. Oh, that was terrible. Good morning. Oh, much better. Thank you. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Rappahannock, and a special welcome to any visitors we have today. Please plan to stay afterwards. We have a nice refreshment section in the fellowship hall. My name is Molly, or Amalia, or Amalie, as is in the bulletin, and I will be your service leader this morning. We are a small and close community of diverse individuals who gather to learn about and share the commonalities and mysteries of our lives, spirituality, and place in this bountiful world. Our community is especially dear in divisive and confusing times. Our speaker today is Reverend Rob Moore, a familiar and inspiring friend of this fellowship. Today, Reverend Rob will continue to share his pilgrim's journey with us. A quote from Charles Quarles, with some slight changes made by my father, whose UU notes I have been looking through. Why dost thou wonder, then, at the height of the stars, the depth of the sea, or at human reason and love? Enter into thine own soul and wander there. These words are from Reverend Michelle Collins. We light this chalice for eyes that see miracles in mundane moments. May this flame remind us that gratitude grows not through waiting for extraordinary gifts, but through noticing the ordinary blessings surrounding us daily.
Rejoice. Rejoice with full hearts, beloved people of blessing. Rejoice. May this time of worship celebrate what we know at our core. Blessings are real and ours to claim and radiate. Blessings are abundant and ours to revel in and pass along. Blessings are transformational and ours to be challenged by as we grow towards the faith we know we can be. Come, let us worship and rejoice.
Our reading today is from an excerpt from The Art of Pilgrimage by Phil Cosino. After our great round of travels through time and space, art and literature, religious quests and nature exploration, here is the undersong of pilgrimage. The pilgrim feels a different call and is changed by the journey. The deepest of those changes is the need to share the gold, the wisdom, the boon of the journey. But the bitter truth about coming home from a long journey is that we soon learn that one man's mystery is another man's superstition. The story we bring back from our journeys is the boon. It is the gift of grace that has passed to us in the heart of the journey. Perhaps it was in the form of an insight into our spiritual life, a glimpse of the wisdom traditions of a radically different culture, a shiver of compassion, an increment of knowledge. All these must be passed on. The boon is a presence in the soul of the world that can be sensed and honored and carried home in your heart. Reverend Rob Moore is no stranger to UUFR. His presence here inspires, challenges, and encourages us. Rob has taught junior and senior high school with the Our Whole Lives, or the OWL program, it's a program of health and sexuality for young people, and has led wellness and soul matters groups. As a UU minister, he has served at Horizons UU Church in Carrollton, Texas, and now in Richmond at First UU Church. He also works for Travelers Insurance, and along with his usual duties, he leads mindfulness sessions and assists in planning an enterprise-wide mindfulness program. Wonderful. He finds time to sing with various choral groups, including the Richmond Men's Chorus. When speaking of pilgrimages and journeys, he reminds us that the journey isn't always easy, and to, as Mr. Rogers always said, look for the helpers, that journey changes us and can change others, and that everyone can take their own journey. Reverend Moore?
Thank you. It's always a joy to be back with you once again. So I know it's a little late in the fall for this, but we come now to what I did on my summer vacation. I'm sure we all remember at some point in school having to write an essay or give an introduction when school started up again about what we did during our summer off. I rarely enjoyed those because I didn't like getting up in front of the class, and I didn't think I ever did anything really exciting enough to share with the class. And of course, how times have changed now. So a couple of visits ago, I spoke on pilgrimage. Rather cheekily, I have included a quote from that sermon in your order of service. I knew then that important for my journey was embodiment, feeling, letting go of control. Now I've taken a pilgrimage to Iona, and I have returned. As this morning's reading invites me to do, I'm here bringing back the Boon and sharing the gold of what I've learned from pilgrimage. As I set out, I intentionally kept my intentions light and general. I did not want to go expecting some major insight or spiritual awakening or religious experience. I simply wanted to commit to being open to whatever came, to whatever experience emerged, and to making some sort of connection. And so, with many blessings in hand and heart offered by my family the few weeks prior, I set off. The first challenge was the journey itself. Beyond the spiritual aspects of pilgrimage, one big reason I took the trip was just to see if I could. With navigating all the travel and all the logistics, I wasn't entirely sure I would handle all of that very well. But I'm happy to report that I met a missed flight and the long hours with a certain amount of serenity and grace. I knew it would all work out fine, and for the most part, it did. Once I got to the island off the west coast of Scotland, I settled in and tried to be open to what might arise, and here's what emerged. I'll share 3 specific experiences which I hope will describe the ineffable in some way, and maybe along the way you will find some connection in the journey as well. The first was experiencing a connection to the stones and the land. There are stones everywhere on that island. The few beaches there are covered with them. Now, I didn't wander off the ferry immediately feel a connection to the place and to all the stones. First, I had to get more embodied, more grounded. Luckily, I was with a group whose leaders were all about inviting us into our bodies, to be grounded in the earth, to feel our roots and connections to the earth. We started the week with a version of Qigong and calling the directions and the 4 elements. We started to the east, direction of spring, renewal, and rebirth, and the direction of air. We called in the spirit of openness, exactly my intention for the trip. Next, we moved to the south, direction of summer, abundance, and growth, and the direction of fire. We called in the spirit of compassion and loving kindness, a common practice for me already. And then on to the west, direction of fall and harvest and gratitude, and the direction of water. We called in the spirit of enoughness, always a constant question in my mind. And finally, we turned to the north, direction of winter, rest, and fallow tending, and the direction of earth. We called in the spirit of resting as the foundation of the other 3, resting my natural state. And for the remainder of the week, we deepened into each of these directions and the practices within them. Deepening into the earth happened slowly over the week. With the invitation to be more embodied, more grounded, I tried to turn the thoughts down, the questions, the complaints, the criticisms. And as I settled into this embodiment, I began to notice the stones around me more and more. As I toured the island and the landmarks there, the abbey, the nunnery, the Celtic crosses built around the island, relics that go back hundreds of years and made from stone that goes back even further, and that could be among the oldest stones on the earth. As I came to these sacred places and monuments, I reached out to touch them. I was amazed that I even had that opportunity to touch them, since most old things in this country or in museums are always so protected behind cases or barricades of some sort. Look with your eyes, not with your hands, we've always been told. So feeling a little guilty, but accepting the invitation to touch and connect, I touched the old stone crosses. I touched the feet of the statue of St. Columba, who first established the abbey there in 563. I touched the stones of the nunnery, and each time I felt warmth. I felt energy and vibration. This was not the cold stone I was used to around my neighborhood or previous travels. Every chance I could, I touched the stone. They became literal touchstones for my week. Through the stones, I felt connected to the earth, to creation itself. I felt the vibrations of life on this planet throughout the millennia. And through these stones, I also felt connected to the ancestors. I don't know if it was a connection to my literal ancestors. I know they are around that area somewhere, but don't know exactly where. More likely, though, I felt a connection to my spiritual ancestors, all those pilgrims through the centuries who have also journeyed to Iona, those who have prayed there for healing, for peace, for freedom, prayed for love and mercy. During one particular guided practice at the well in front of the abbey, where countless pilgrims gathered for refreshment and healing water, an image arose within my mind and heart of being a steward at that well hundreds of years ago. The well itself was lower and the water closer to the surface. I sat by the well and welcomed pilgrims to the abbey. I scooped the water from the well and offered it to those who came. I wore somewhat tattered clothes, and I was open and hospitable to all who approached the well. I likened it to the role I play in much of my service to the world. I welcome the stranger by leading small groups, by preaching in an open and hospitable style, by holding space for the stories and life of my clients in spiritual direction. I don't know if I would go so far as claiming I was remembering a past life, but in the openness of that moment, I didn't, and I don't now, discount the possibility. One man's mystery is one man's superstition, after all. A few moments later, still at the well, I was reminded of another story I told you last year about my vision at the start of my spiritual direction training, where I sat by a pool in a cave and the word Pilgrim emerged from the vapors of the water. At this well in Iona, I suddenly connected the water from that pool in the cave to the water below me in the well. In a sudden flash of Star Trek techno jargon, the time-space continuum collapsed upon itself, and I was aware of past and present in a connected back and forth, aware that the ancestors who had prayed over, drank from, and bathed in the water in this well, this water somehow connected to the water in the pool in that cave, and they sent me that word Pilgrim, which began my contemplative journey and ultimately led me to this well, coming full circle. Across those almost exactly 10 years, from the vision in the cave to that well on Iona, I saw time differently. Past, present, and future were interwoven, folding back on each other and existing all at once. It was clear that the connection was there, and those Iona pilgrims of centuries past sent me that name and invitation of Pilgrim. And that invitation led me by twists and turns to that well on Iona, full circle but not linear. It was magical, mysterious, heart-opening, and earth-grounding. And in that moment, the ineffable was thoroughly effed and completely knowable. And with that image and feeling still fresh in my mind, it was time to trot off to our planned hike to the top of the highest peak on Iona. As we came to start up our hike up the hill, our trail leader encouraged us to go at our own pace and to let us know that if anyone needed assistance or a break, to call out red light up the line, and she would slow down and circle back if needed. As I looked up thinking that it wasn't that high, not that challenging, I recall saying in my head, I wonder who will need to say red light first. As the only guy in the group and in the middle of the age range of those in our group, I knew it wouldn't be me. Well, guess who it was? The first and only person needing to call red light. That was me. I have told a few of you of my difficulty driving over your bridge to get here. I get a visceral panic attack just approaching the bridge. My heartbeat begins thumping in my chest. I grip the steering wheel as hard as I can, and my breathing is short and shallow and very fast. I try to dip into my spiritual toolkit to slow my breathing, to loosen my grip, and ride it out, which helps enough to keep me going to the other side, but not enough to really ease the symptoms that much. Well, this is the same thing that happened halfway up that hill. We came to a spot that was not that treacherous, but suddenly felt very open and very unsteady. I knew the feeling well enough from the bridge to call red light and take a break, even though it wasn't as intense as in that first moment as on the bridge that first or second time. But I was able to lean into the hill, just rest on my knees for a moment. I asked if there was a clearing around the next bend, and there was, so I continued on. When we reached our initial destination a few minutes later, almost at the top, the space opened up again, and all I could see was open air. The wind was quite intense. My backpack was a little too heavy, and I felt very unsteady, like I could be blown off that hill at any moment. Then I had the full panic attack, and our trail leader could tell I was not doing well. She pulled me aside, told me to slow down, take deep breaths, all the things that I know in my head, but in that moment, I needed her to walk me and talk me through it. I could not access it on my own. She proceeded to find a nook for me away from the wind, and then an even smaller crevice between two rocks for me to sit and eventually lie down in. She encouraged me to find a place of comfort and stability within me. And with the connection to the stones fresh in my mind and body, I placed my hands on the two rocks on either side and focused on breathing deeply into my belly. I finally was able to breathe more easily, feeling the connection to my center and to the earth. As I started to feel better, I could see the top of the hill just in front of me, about 25 yards. I could see all the people hiking up there and enjoying themselves with little trouble. And I had that thought, it's just right there. I can make it. But then the next thought was, you're okay where you are. Let's not push it right now. And so I stayed put. Seeing the top was enough in that moment. So this experience became the point of reflection the entire rest of the trip. I have been on a journey of surrender for much of the 10 years since beginning my spiritual direction training, and each time it comes up again, it gets deeper and deeper. This experience was another lesson in surrender and really in vulnerability, acceptance, and gratitude. As I continue to reflect on this throughout the rest of my week on Iona and the months since returning, I have focused on that vulnerability piece of it. That voice in my head telling me that I would be the last person needing to call out red light is often the dominant voice. In my mind, this means I must be the strong one, the responsible one, the perfect one. And knowing instead, I was the first one to call red light, realizing that I needed the help in that moment, and remembering that when I did ask for that help, and more importantly, actually allowed myself to receive the help, it was a powerful affirmation of the fact that, lo and behold, I'm human, capable of strength and weakness. Showing weakness, asking for help, and allowing myself to receive it was incredibly empowering in an unexpected way. The world kept turning. Other people didn't need my strength. I didn't need to be in control of anything in that moment. I was able to be the one needing help, and I felt free and unburdened. As I made my way home at the end of that week, these connections and experiences were to become so important and a lot sooner than I ever expected. As I'd made it home and started sharing some of my tales, when I got to the story of my time on the hill, I burst into tears. The feeling of vulnerability came rushing back, and along with it, embarrassment and confusion. I think it was that sharing of vulnerability that I've never been able to do before. With my family, it's especially, I think that I must be the perfect husband, the perfect father, minister, activist, whatever role you want to put on there. And in that moment of admitting that I am none of those things, it hit me deeply, and the tears flowed. A week or two later, it hit again, and with extra force. One of my immediately family members suffered a major relapse of a chronic illness, and our world was completely upended. Again, I had to admit that I didn't have any answers. I had to admit that I was not in control of this or any situation. And all the while, I remembered what my retreat leader told me on the hill. Just keep breathing, slow down, find your center and your ground, connect to the stones and to the ancestors. So I asked for help. I called on the ministers at church. I called the care team for meals for a few days, something I had never done before. And most importantly, I realized I just needed to clear my days and nights and weeks of responsibilities. I took a few days off from work. I let go of the small group ministry I was launching for a new church year. I sent my regrets to my main social justice activity that I needed to take a break for a while, to devote my attention to personal and family healing. I also reached out to a new friend from the Iona trip just to have someone else to talk it through with. I started going to counseling and therapy again after a long time away. And all of those conversations were so difficult. It took days to pick up the phone or write out an email. But I had the affirmation of my vulnerability being taken seriously on that hill and being attended to by those in my support network on the island to keep me going. Each time I told the story of what is happening in the family, the tears welled up again, sometimes staying for a while, sometimes a quick flash and dissipation. I've told folks I cried more in those first few weeks back from Iona than I had in the previous 20 years. They were right there on the surface from that week in Iona, from that week of openness and vulnerability. As the months have flown by since returning, I've asked myself if I really needed to spend all that time and money to travel multiple thousands of miles to Iona. And so far, my answer is yes. I needed to get away from responsibilities, from the day-to-day. I needed to get to a place that held meaning for me, with people who were also on their own journey. I needed the retreat leaders to continue to offer invitations to embodiment and to have the space and intention to listen and practice. I needed the stones and the ancestors to renew my connections to myself, to place, to creation, and ultimately to the God of my understanding. I needed the experience of vulnerability far from home to realize and remember that I am often vulnerable at home, and that I can share that more often with the people I love and who love me. And to share it with you as a reminder of your own vulnerability, so that we might all share in that common humanity which calls us together in service, compassion, love, and mercy. Returning home then offers the challenge of remembering all of that in each moment, of finding the memory in the place, the meaning in the place that I am now, and the people with me now, of remembering the stones and the ancestors, and of connecting with them more intentionally, of sitting with Spirit regularly in prayer and mindfulness, of being aware when help is needed, and being able to ask for and accept it more easily. Now that I have brought back this boon and shared it with you and with others, I need to remember to see it in the everyday comings and goings, to increase my support circle, to remember to invoke that circle more often, to rest and renew when circumstances make it necessary, trusting that others are stepping up when I have to step back. The invitation is there for all of us as well. Whether you are tens, hundreds, or thousands of miles away from home, or tooling around in familiar circles, seek the boon available to you. Yours will probably look a lot different than mine did, but the seeking and the awareness is available to us all. Be aware of that which connects you to creation, to your ancestors, to land, to place, to air, fire, water, and earth. Be aware of that which challenges you, where you are most vulnerable, and go into it whenever possible. As we've often heard, the only way out is through. And above all, be aware of when you've had enough and need rest and renewal, and don't be afraid to ask for help. The love, mercy, and compassion of others and of Spirit is there for us all. May it be forever so, and amen.
Most revealing thing anybody has ever spoken. And it's so amazing to be vulnerable. It really, really is. And I don't know how you find your world today different from before, other than to feel more secure in your vulnerability. And I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Yes, I've been becoming more aware of, actually the opposite, aware of falling back into old habits and trying to push against that more. And to it's more obvious now to me. And so that's part of sharing it with family, sharing it with you all, sharing it with the next congregations that are coming up in a few months, is making it easier to be to share that with others and not hold it so tight inside. So, yeah.
One thing that I struggle with is the fear that if I give in to that feeling of vulnerability, then I won't come back from it, you know. You got to figure out a way to can keep going. You have any insights on how to do that? You know, because it can feel really good when you're between those rocks and relaxing, you know.
Yeah, that I relate to that very much. I think that's where I have my heart and mind have been, is that I can't go into that vulnerable space because that's the letting go of control part. Because as you just said, if I go there, I may not come back, or I don't know. And so it's that, for me, I think part of it's the fear of the unknown. Part of it is the fear of losing control and what that looks like. And so that's part of the affirmation that I received on the Hill, is that I could go there, people could respond, people could be helpful, and the world kept turning, I kept turning, nothing bad happened. And so just that, having that experience, being willing to go into it, and having that affirmation makes it easier for the next time. And so that's the spiritual journey right there in a nutshell, of taking the step into the mystery, being afraid of it, going anyway, getting some kind of affirmation, whether it's the people along the journey with you or spirit or whatever, your deepest self, and like, oh, okay, well, I made it through that, so I'll keep going a little further and see what happens.
The word that just came to me is strength, inner strength. And I think you won't find it if you don't go there.
I have long been coming to this fellowship because I want to build the connections and keep them strong, so that when the time comes and I'm vulnerable, as Hanukkah has been vulnerable, and as we have seen other members of our congregation be in that vulnerable place, and this congregation is so wonderfully supportive, and I'm invested, guys. And I appreciate everyone, and especially the fact that we all are present for one another when the need is there.
You spoke of this vulnerability when you were on the Hill, overwhelming you at that time. And then you also spoke of finding, when you returned, a level of the vulnerability hitting you again, if you will, with your family issues. Did you find a difference between having to accept and deal with vulnerability amongst a group of strangers versus this vulnerability that you experienced with your family? Was it harder for you to deal with your family? How did those two different experiences, or how did those experiences differ?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think it is harder with the family because, I do have responsibilities, and in that situation, I had responsibilities, but I didn't let that be all that there was to the experience. That the affirmation of the experience on the Hill gave me the insight to say, okay, I do not need to go in full responsibility mode and focus only on that. At the same time, I can be vulnerable and say, hey, ministers, I need some help. Hey, bring some food to the family. Because I think a year ago, 5 years ago, I would not have done that. I would have made sure that I went to the grocery store every day and I made the meals that needed to be made. And so having that, having the experience on the Hill when I didn't have any responsibilities and I could just let it go and, okay, help me. And then coming home where I had more of the balance to make, it made the balance easier, even within the difficulty of the experience. Yeah.
Thank you all for your comments. It reminds me of a time when I was in college, and I was chosen as part of a string quartet to go to a festival in Vermont. Rudolf Serkin was leading the festival, and Pablo Casals was there. And I was sitting, we were tutored every day, but I was listening to a rehearsal of the larger orchestra, the professionals, and they were playing some piece by Liszt. And I started crying. I could not stop. I just kept crying and crying. I had to leave. I managed to tell the guy in charge of us that I'd walk home, and I did. And I never knew what that was. I see it a little bit in a different light now. I never thought I was much of a player, but I was good enough to go there. And when I came back and got to be friends with Susan, we spent a good part of our life giving a musical gift to those that would listen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.